guys, welcome back to the page in the chapter, or welcome if you are new here. My name is Paige and today we're going through the books that I want you to read in April and May. So my idea for this is kind of like a reverse TBR, like it's not a TBR for me, it's a TBR for you guys. I wasn't really sure what to call this and I'm not even sure if this is a good idea. But basically it's just what I would put together if somebody came to me and was like, put together a TBR for me for April or May. To be honest, even like just June as well, like this is what I would do. These are books that I love, these are books that I think have good like spring energy, are going to be quite uplifting, are going to really fit with the changing weather and that like boost in serotonin we all seem to get. Like these are just books for that, and they're not necessarily spring recommendations because there's just a mix of things in here, and if you want actual spring recommendations then I can do that for you, because to me there is a distinction between these books and then a whole video on spring recommendations. This is just a TBR for you guys. This is what I want you to be reading. So if you like the sound of this video and you would like to see more from me, then do please feel free to hit that big red subscribe button down below and stay tuned for future content. I upload every single Wednesday and every single Sunday, so there is no shortage of bookish content here for you to enjoy. And without further ado, let's get on into the books I want you to be reading. I've got my herbal tea. Oh, I said that kind of American, I dropped the H. I've got my herbal tea here with my new mug because I'm on a herbal tea kick right now. So the first book I want you having on your TBR and that you need to be reading is The Hurricane Wars by Thea Guanzon. This is like one of my favourite books of this year, but I've read so many good books this year in different genres that I have no idea how the hell I'm going to choose what my favourite book of the year is by the time we get to the end. But this is definitely in contention and you need to have this on your TBR because this is just good, solid fantasy romance fun. I wouldn't say romantasy even, to be honest. This is just a fantasy book that has a fairly strong romance subplot, so I keep it on that shelf. But trust me, this is gonna like suck you in and have you completely engrossed in this story and you will not be able to think of anything else. This is so addictive. So this follows our main character Taliesin, and she was kind of left on the steps of this like orphanage in a different like kingdom, town, whatever you would call it, and all she has ever known is the Hurricane Wars, where the Night Emperor is continually invading and taking over these kingdoms slash countries, islands, whatever you want to call them. And Taliesin is very committed to making sure this place where she has grown up is not overtaken by the Night Emperor, but she has always wondered where her magic comes from, where she truly comes from. And when the Night Emperor's son discovers Taliesin has the magic that started the Hurricane Wars to begin with, he is tasked with trying to kill her. But when a new horror emerges, Taliesin and Alaric have to work together in order to stop this new power from having an impact, because this new power will wipe out both of them. And in this one scenario they have a common enemy, and we see this like very seamless enemies to lovers. I don't know if I've ever seen enemies to lovers be done quite this well, and also this kind of like enemies to being forced to have this grudging respect and trust for each other because they are working together. It is so addictive. I think the actual fantasy of this is so interesting. I cannot wait for the next book so that I can find out what on earth is going on, what's going to happen. And then also just the romance really adds a special something to what is already a very complete and very good fantasy book. This is one of my favourite books and I need everybody to be on this hype train with me, so please go and check this out. Next we have a book that does really have spring vibes, and that is The Unmaking of June Faroh by Adrian Young. The setting of this book is very spring, early summer-ish. It kind of takes place in the summertime too, and it really just gives me that feeling of a warm spring day or a warm summer's evening. And I think the essence of this book really captures that really well. And so I think for all of the spring summery feels, you need to be reading this book. This is a magical realism story, and we follow our main character, June Faroh. And when the last woman in her family dies, she sets out on an adventure to figure out why the women in her family are cursed, and to hopefully prevent herself from falling victim to the same curse, where the signs are already starting to show. And this leads her on quite the fun adventure. It does have a romantic subplot, but this is a smaller romantic subplot, and I was so pleasantly surprised by this book. I was so gripped by it, and I really want you guys to be reading this in April, May, June times, because it's a very gripping book. It's very confusing and wonderful, and very, very well written. The magic system is so complex, but written in such a simple, easy to understand way that doesn't feel overwhelming. And as I said before, like, just the spring vibes of this that this book evokes and the writing style evokes. It is the perfect book to have on your spring/early summer TBR. I need to come up with a better saying for this. Next, I have one of my favorite books of all time, and I'm so excited to be talking about this with you. Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater. I need to continue with this series. I adored this book, and I also read this book last spring. I read it last May, I remember, because I read it the day after Eurovision. This is a very short, very easy to read, cozy fantasy, cozy low stakes fantasy. If you enjoyed Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldry and would like something of that same kind of atmosphere and feel to it, then Half a Soul is gonna be your next bet. This is a fairy tale retelling set in the Regency period, and we follow our main character Theodora, and she, thanks to an unfortunate run-in with the Fae when she was young, is existing with half of a soul. And this means that she is really struggling in this Regency period, because she often does things that are deemed not acceptable in public or embarrassing in public. She doesn't really understand social convention or how to carry out conversations successfully as a result of this. And when magical happenings start happening in this Regency England and children start going missing, Theodora is thrust into an adventure along with Lord Elias Wilder in order to get to the bottom of this. And we follow Theodora as she really comes to accept the fact that she is missing half of her soul, and that this is who she is. And yes, she doesn't understand social convention, but she has other strengths that are really helpful, and this is all set against the backdrop of her and Lord Elias working together and kind of falling in love, and him learning to really understand her in a way that nobody else has really bothered to. This is very, very cozy, low stakes, easy, speedy read. I recommend reading this when it is lovely and warm, the sun is shining, and you just have a day to sit down and get lost in like a fairy realm, essentially. A Regency England meets fairies kind of land, and this is one of my favourite cozy reads, one of my favourite books of all time. If I could track down the hardbacks of the rest of the books in this series, then I 1000% would have finished them by now, but they unfortunately don't make them anymore. So I have this one rare hardback copy of Half a Soul, and I'll have to get paperbacks of the rest. Next up, I had one book on my list to talk to you about this, but I'm actually going to give you an option. These books exist under the same umbrella in my mind. They are by the same author, and I think you could pick and choose which one you wanted. But so I'm going to talk about both of them right now, because I think you guys should have a choice, and that is either The X-Talk or Weather Girl by Rachel Lynn Solomon. Both of these give me very spring vibes. I personally think I prefer The X-Talk, but Weather Girl is more spring vibes, and you know, it talks a lot about the weather, and I think the atmosphere of this one fits spring a little bit more. But this was the one that I had on my list because this is personally my favorite. So this follows our main character, Shay Goldstein, and she is a radio host at a local Seattle radio station, and this radio station is really starting to struggle for listenership and ratings, and it's not looking good. Shay is forced to briefly stage a fake relationship with her co-worker Dominic, so that then they can have this breakup and fulfill the role of this talk show that Shay has pitched called The X Talk, where two exes listen to people's relationship drama and provide advice on it. So Shay and Dominic pretend to date for a short while so that they can have this very public breakup and host this show. But when Shay and Dominic start to fall for each other, it raises some questions for the show and if the show can continue and their careers and things like that. And then Weather Girl is a very, very fun story based on our main character Ari, and she is a weather presenter at her dream station where her idol works, where the woman who got her into being a meteorologist works, except her boss is going through a very messy breakup with one of the other people who run the station, which means that they are not being very good bosses. They are embroiling their staff in their drama. They are not really offering advice or allowing the growth of the people that work there. So Ari teams up with one of her co-workers, Russell, to get their bosses back together so that they will be able to receive the enrichment that they are looking for in their job. If you guys like the Netflix movie Set It Up, I want to say it's called Set It Up, where they try and set their bosses up so that they can have a break from them. This is like that movie in book form, and it's done just as well and it is just as fun. And this again like is the more springy option of the two. But what I love about the X Talk is it's this like reverse twist on the fake dating trope, where it's like a fake breakup trope. I've never seen anyone do that before. It was really unique, and I think it worked really well, and I think brought up some really interesting dynamics and arguments between the couples that were a bit different to fake dating. So I think both of these are excellent choices. Also have to say that in terms of representation, Rachel Lynn Solomon books are really good for that, in the sense that she always has very normal characters, like in their appearance as well. She does not have these like big beefy men. Sometimes it's nice to read about these really incredibly stereotypically attractive like honcho men. I'm not a stranger to reading those books, but I do really appreciate the effort to have normal men with normal body types and normal women with normal body types, and also mental health representation is excellent in these books, particularly Weather Girl. Yeah, I will not say that these are like the best romance novels I've ever read in the entire world, but I do think they're really fun. I do think representation is important in these books, and I do really think the spring vibes and the fun, easy breezy vibes for both of these make them excellent choices, and I really want you guys to read them this spring/summer. And then finally, I have another like new favorite book that I would like you to read, and that is Fangirl Down by Tessa Bailey. You will not get a more like summery atmosphere to a book than in a golf romance, because golf is a summer sport. Golf is going on right now. We just had Augusta, just like Augusta this weekend. I don't think anyone who watches this channel will particularly care, but I have been getting into my golf a little bit lately. It was a mix of starting to play golf and reading this book at exactly the same weekend, and I'm a little bit obsessed now, I'm not gonna lie. So please do not be put off by the fact this is a golf romance, even if you don't like golf. When I say this is one of the best sports romances I've ever read, that sentence is not completely based on my bias towards the sport. What I love and adore about this book, and have spoken about many times, is that you cannot have this book without it being a sports romance. It is not just that Wells is a golfer and then he has this relationship outside of the sport. Like, the sports aspect is so ingrained into this book. I adore that. I would really like to see more sports romances that lean so heavily into the sport they are portraying. So in this book we follow Wells, a down on his luck golfer, and his biggest fan, Josephine. And when Wells decides to quit the PGA Tour out of pure frustration and downward spiral, he blows up at Josephine, who is there to support him week in and week out, and he just blows up and completely turns her against him. But Wells is not a bad guy. He is going through a lot and getting really frustrated and feeling like the sport he is devoted so much to is turning its back on him. But he is not an intrinsically bad guy, and he does feel really bad about blowing Josephine off and being a complete dick to her. So in order to make it up to her, he proposes that she become his caddy, and a caddy in golf is someone who knows their golfer so well that they will be able to provide advice on the strategy for the golf course, what club they should use. They know exactly like the distances their golfer will be able to hit with each club, how the golf course is actually laid out, and what they think strategically the golf club they should use is. And they are there to offer advice, and as a result they get a percentage of the amount that the golfer wins each weekend. So the proposition is that if Josephine can get Wells back into a winning position to earn money, then she will then get a cut of that, which would be very helpful for her, and she jumps at this opportunity. And the sports is so intrinsic into this because it's like forced proximity as a result of them being in like constantly being around each other and having to travel together for these golf tournaments. But because Wells is forced to learn to trust Josephine on the golf course, it would be impossible for that trust that you and rapport that you have with someone that is getting you results that you haven't seen in ages would then bleed into your personal relationship too, and you would start to feel like you could trust them and trust somebody for the first time in a long time outside of the golf course. And so I loved seeing the relationship play out between these two. If you want a book that has sweating in the sun all day, learning to trust each other during the daytime, and then these like hot summer nights, this is that book. It feels like a summer holiday romance, except make it sports. The golf element, yes, it's intrinsic and yes, it's big, but I wouldn't say you need to be a fan of golf in order to read this. I think Tessa Bailey does a really good job of explaining the basics and everything that you would need to understand this story. And I think she also does a way of making it hot. I highly recommend this. It's one of my favourite romances that I have read in a long time, and I really want everybody to be reading this. So for the sports vibes, for the easy breezy vibes, and for the summer vibes, you need to be reading this. And so that is the TBR that I want you to be reading in the upcoming months. I kept it short, I kept it manageable. I am obviously not expecting anyone to actually do this entire TBR, but if you pick things from it or you do want to do it, then please let me know, like tag me in some way, send it to me over on Instagram or Twitter or something. Just let me know if you are reading my recommendations or exploring the TBR that I have set for somebody else. And yeah, I would love to hear your thoughts on this. So if you guys enjoyed this video and you would like to stick around and see more from me, then do please feel free to hit that big red subscribe button down below and stay tuned for future content. I upload every single Wednesday and every single Sunday, so there is no shortage of bookish content here for you to enjoy. I hope you guys are having a fantastic week, you're enjoying everything you are reading, you enjoyed all of these recommendations, and I truly hope there are no reading slumps in your future, and I will see you for my next video. Bye guys.